Hello, and you are very welcome to the Abu Dhabi Sustainability Week web series. In today's session, we are shining a spotlight on sustainability in fashion. And we have some fantastic speakers joining the panel today to share their insights and knowledge on the sustainable fashion industry. I will be the host for this session. My name is Dr. Dee Duffy, and I have been lecturing and researching in the area of consumer behaviour and fashion for over a decade at the Technological University Dublin in Ireland. More recently, I've taken up the position of Director of Education with Junk Kouture, an organisation you will hear more about throughout this conversation. I would like to say, from an educator's perspective, there is an increased impetus to embed sustainability literacy into curriculum from primary school right up to third level education. And this gives me hope. I believe the Gen Z demographic will be the change makers of this fashion industry that is gradually losing its former allure amid stark statistics of it being the second largest polluter after the oil industry and the second largest consumer of the world's overall water supply, and contributes to 10% of all humanity's carbon emissions. Look, I could continue to share much quoted statistics and sound bites with you, and yet if you are already operating in the sustainable fashion space, you will have heard these figures many times, and dangerously, they start to lose their shock value. It's human nature. We find ways to distance ourselves from what these statistics actually mean to the day-to-day lives of people experiencing the destructive forces of the industry firsthand, in their communities, their surrounding landscapes, their personal health, their access to natural, clean resources. And again, I could go on. And while there is much devastation, on the other hand, our panelists today will bring a sense of hope and optimism around the innovative new initiatives that are gaining momentum in the sustainable fashion space. Organizations such as Fashion Revolution and Junk Kouture, which are calling on young people to become future change makers and activists of tomorrow. Disruptor brands like the Giving Movement, who are challenging the traditional manufacturing and retail processes. Entrepreneurial endeavors like Goshopia.com, which takes the footwork out of busy consumers' lives by curating ethically sourced brands to help consumers make better choices. And to firms like McKinsey & Co, who are doing great research and publishing excellent reports, such as their Fashion on Climate report. These organizations compile facts and design pathways to convince businesses of the ultimate economic benefits to be gained from moving to circular fashion systems. This is just a snapshot of the caliber of our panelists joining us here today. If you have any questions for any of the panelists, we'll happily answer as many questions as we can towards the end of the session, time permitting. So please do share your thoughts in the Q&A function. But now, to get started, I'm going to let each of our guests introduce themselves. So we'll start with Araceli.
Let me unmute myself first. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much, Dee. Pleasure to be here. So let me introduce myself. My name is Araceli Gallego. I am Spanish. I have a little daughter, and I'm a sustainable fashion advocate. I speak a lot about sustainability and sustainable fashion because it's my passion. And as you very well said, I'm also a serial entrepreneur when it comes to sustainability and fashion altogether. I am the founder of Dubai Fashion News, which is a digital publication here in Dubai. I'm also the founder of The Conscious Fashion and Goshopia, which is my baby. It's kind of like an e-marketplace for slow, sustainable, and socially responsible brands. I'm also co-founder of the Sustainable Souk, which is a sustainable market, outdoor market here in Dubai, where all sustainable brands, not only on fashion, but also in other aspects of our daily lives, come together. And that way they can, start and initiate the journey of people that are still, in the process of embracing a more sustainable lifestyle. So yeah, that's what I do. Besides that, I'm also Fashion Revolution Country Coordinator, Remake Ambassador, and Slow Fashion Change Maker. So I'm a busy gal.
You certainly are. Thank you, Araceli. Okay, so next, Corinne.
Very good to meet you all. Corinne Sawers. I'm a junior partner with McKinsey Company, and I've been working on climate and sustainability topics my whole career in various capacities in the not-for-profit sector, in kind of advising big corporates, and also in investing in sustainability-oriented startups, of which I've been doing a lot of in the fashion space over the last 5 years. Over the last few years, I've also been focused whilst at McKinsey on the fashion space, and that's both in kind of, as you mentioned, research and publications, helping to bring to light the kind of fact base around the nature of the problem and how we can solve it, and also working with big corporates on the transitions they're trying to undertake in having more sustainable fashion brands and manufacturing practices. So I see the topic from many angles, incredibly passionate about it. I've worked very hard on changing my own shopping habits over the years, quitting fast fashion, and very
brilliant. And next up we have
Hi, thanks. So I'm a British designer. My name's Kharunisa. I am head of design for the Giving Movement. I've been doing this for about a year and a half. Prior to this, I was senior designer at H&M in Stockholm for about 4 years. And prior to that, I worked for a brand called George in the UK. So my transition has kind of been from like bigger retailers to now a small kind of local fashion brand where we're focused on being 100% sustainable and also a positive impact. So with every garment that we sell, we also donate $4 to charity. So yeah.
Okay, amazing. Yeah, so you're going to have a different perspectives from both sides of the fashion I suppose, journey. So last up we have Katie. So Katie, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
I'm muting myself as well. Thanks so much, Dee. And girls, it's so nice to hear your intros and great to be speaking with you today. So my name is Katie Brill and I am the head of PR and communications here at Junk Kouture, which is an integrated media and entertainment company that has an emphasis on impacting the behavioral habits of our world youth through fashion, creativity, self-expression, and of course, sustainability. I suppose a fun fact about me is I actually took part in Junk Kouture almost 10 years ago. I still can't believe it. It was the second year of Junk Kouture being, starting off in Ireland, and I designed and created a garment entirely out of orange peel skin. So that is where my journey with sustainable fashion and, how intriguing I find the whole industry. And that is why I took a job with Junk Kouture 2 years ago. I absolutely love what the brand is about. And it's so wonderful meeting all you girls today with your own fantastic and inspiring stories. So yeah, that's me.
Okay. Brilliant. Well, look, loads of experience here. So I'm really excited to hear everybody's, different perspectives from their experience to date and slightly global as well. So it's great to get all these various perspectives. So we'll start with a nice big broad question to start off, and maybe Corinne, I'll deliver this one first up to you. Can the fashion industry be sustainable? Is it a loaded question? Is it a yes/no question? There you go. You take it from there, Corinne.
Yes, absolutely. It can be, and it must be. I think I really feel we're in a moment where there's a paradigm shift going on in the world about both climate and more broadly kind of hitting against our resource, responsible use of resource in the world. And I think people are starting to get that we just have to change. We have to address this stuff. We don't really have a choice anymore. I absolutely believe it can be, but it's going to look unrecognizable. I think how clothes are made, how people shop for clothes, and the lifetime of clothes needs to change drastically. So a huge amount of change has to happen before we get there, but I'm absolutely an optimist that it can happen and it has to happen.
An interesting word. We don't have a choice anymore. hopefully we won't, in a sense, that the, changes and change makers and policies come down the line. Okay, so maybe Kharunisa, could you give your take on that? Can the fashion industry be sustainable?
Yes, I agree with you, Corinne. I feel like absolutely it can be sustainable. I feel like we're quite a bit far off that, but we're on the path. And I feel like if we continue to be optimistic and work hard towards that, I feel like it will happen. And I am very optimistic. That's why I'm in this. And I feel like that's why all of us are kind of in this, where we want to make a big change. We've joined this kind of movement to create a change. And we just have to keep going.
Okay, great. And maybe Katie, do you want to come in here on this?
Yeah, definitely. And I'd love to add on to what the girls said and said I'm absolutely optimistic about it as well. But I think there's most definitely room for a lot of improvements that can be made. And speaking specifically, Dee, on the target audience that Junk Kouture works with, Generation Z, we believe it's this generation that will really have the lasting positive change, and because it's an inherent part of their DNA now, sustainability and the conversations that are having. And I suppose when it comes to resisting the lure of fashion, young people do face quite tough challenge as they're surrounded by fashionistas, trends on social media that are ever changing, these micro seasons that are just ridiculous at the moment, and really difficult for these young people to I suppose peer pressure and then staying trendy and fashionable. And I'm on the cuff of Gen Z myself. I'm 1 year off, but conversations about the climate crisis and the shift in trends with secondhand shopping, thrift flipping, and so on has made this generation consider the impact that the industry is having, and their own shopping habits that we're having as well. Because I suppose myself and my friends, when we used to go to school discos, you were buying a new dress or a new top and wearing it once, and that was it. And I never had to question my shopping habits before. But now, as this generation rises, I suppose they're making up 40% of the consumers, and they're seeking more sustainable brands and products. So big brands have to be aware that this age group is hyper aware of the environment and how best they have to create consciously, because younger people, and I suppose everyone, is asking more from brands. They're thrift flipping, they're learning to sew again and upcycle, and then they're making it trendy through social media, which I think is really, really fun. And then that seems to be catching on now, and then these young people are becoming these micro influencers for change. And I think it's really become apparent in the last kind of year or two, especially with the pandemic, with TikTok becoming a thing, and kids are at home, putting stitching into an old t-shirt, and many of these changes that are happening, it's these changes and these behavioral changes then that are going to speak to these big brands and saying that you need to slow down your production because we're slowing down our buying. And I think that collectively then will have a massive change in the fashion industry, and then can work towards making it sustainable, which, fingers crossed, I'm sure we all really want.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, yes.
I just wanted to jump in and emphasize that point, Katie, that from what I'm seeing with kind of big established fashion brands and kind of conglomerates, and this Gen Z point is incredibly live, and that this is explicit, that part of the commercial reason for doing this is because Gen Z are the rising, the wealth is transferring to them, they're an increasing share of the buying power, and they really care. So I absolutely agree with you, and the kind of the powers that be in the corporate world have got it, and it's a huge motivator. So if there's a message to Gen Z out there, is keep going, because you have a huge amount of power to change things.
Keep going, keep driving, because that's what's going to drive change, because eventually the brands are going to have to listen, because collectively we'll come together as a society, and there won't be room for this the fashion habits that were a past. So I'm glad you agree.
Yeah, no, I think any brand that aren't listening to Gen Z will become irrelevant if they don't watch their changing in the way they're behaving with and interacting with brands, for sure. Okay, and finally, Araceli.
I'm not so optimistic as you guys. I love your optimism and your energy, but maybe I'm more on the realistic side. And my hope is actually, but you say, Katie, I agree with you. My hope is Generation Z. But until we reach there, there is still a lot of other buyers, purchasers out here that that we are actually part of the problem. So that's the thing. In my humble opinion, things will change, in this case, from bottom up. So definitely coming from the consumer behavior. If we change our consumer behavior, it will trigger the big companies to do changes. But what we have found out is kind of like this consumer behavior, it takes time. It takes time. And not only that, people may not be ready really to embrace sustainable fashion the way that it is right now. So I think we need, first of all, a push when it comes to educating the young generation. So it's super important what Junk Kouture is doing, for example, to bring awareness, to make everyone aware of what actually there is an issue in this part of our lives, in the closet, basically. I think the policy makers need to also help and support small and independent fashion brands, because otherwise it is very difficult to compete with the big ones. At the moment right now, the market, there's not that many Gen Z buying, you know what I mean? So if we want these brands to be able to thrive and to be able to really do any impact, take into account the magnitude of each one, I think we really need some policy to be in place to help and support the small, independent, eco-friendly fashion brands and designers. And I also think we need to hold on to technology. That's also my other hope. My hope is technology that in the future, I'm dreaming of having all of us just like a machine where we print our clothes to our sizing, and we don't need to be churning and creating zillions of sizes that then at the end is not. You need that, you create it, I don't know, 3D printing or whatever. And so that would actually, be an important change. I agree with Corinne, probably the future is not really how we think it's going to be. I think it's going to be more disruptive actually than what we are seeing now. And one of the things that, for example, I'm very hopeful for, right now, I don't know if you guys know, but only 1% of the clothes that are thrown away are recycled. Only 1%. So this is something that when it comes to consumer behavior is easy to amp easily. Not only just to go to thrift stores and to recycle the clothes, we really need to make sure that they go to the proper ways to be recycled or to be reused or donated or something. I think it was H&M that is actually working on a technology that will help when you are recycling. This maybe not many people know, but when you are recycling clothes, it has to be pure. For example, if it's cotton, all of it has to be cotton. If it's polyester, all of it has to be polyester. If it's a mixed blend, if it's a blend, it cannot be recycled at the moment with the technology that we have. So actually there is some innovation in there in Hong Kong happening that I think was H&M being part of, I don't know, the sponsors or something. And I'm hoping they really manage to make this happen, because that would mean that most of our clothes, which actually normally are blends, will be able to be recycled. So I'm hoping for technology, for Generation Z, and for the policymakers to help really shape this, because there is no other way. Sustainable fashion industry, it better be sustainable, because otherwise we are all doomed here. So we really need to push for this.
Yeah, absolutely. Really important points there. And I do think huge opportunity in technology. That technology in particular that you mentioned there sounds really hopeful in terms of dividing those blended materials for the future.
Yeah, or 3D printing, or I don't know, there's other things that maybe hopefully in the future we are able to harness and
the not too distant future. Okay, brilliant. Well, this will actually, Katie, did you want to come in there? No, you're okay. Okay, so we move on. It leads in quite nicely into our second question, which people might ask. We're talking about these things. People be asking, what are fashion brands, companies, organizations doing about sustainability? Those in the space, or people entering the space, feels like there's a lot of conversation, but you might want to know, well, what are people doing? So I would love to hear from each of you, and we maybe start with Kharunisa. How is your organization actually embedding sustainability into its strategic operations?
Yeah, so first of all, I just wanted to start a point with which Araceli mentioned with the H&M technology. So that is something that's happening in Hong Kong at the moment. So when you're kind of giving your clothes back the stores are kind of collecting secondhand garments, and then the machine is able to separate the yarns, which means that the yarns can then be kind of twined back together in its like original form to then create new garments, which is amazing. And I really hope that that can be put into place. And yeah, so since my kind of career in H&M began, that's when I really got really interested and affected by sustainability within fashion. Living in Scandinavia, it's one of the most progressive kind of societies when it comes to being sustainable and being really conscious of sustainability. So that really kind of changed my habits, like my own personal habits, the decisions I was making in terms of shopping, what I was eating, even the work I was doing. So it began there where year on year, every collection we are making sure that we have more of a percentage of like sustainable fabrics within the range, because a big retailer like that, it's very difficult to go from using regular fabrics to then using completely sustainable fabrics. Sustainable fabrics are a lot more expensive as well to buy. So that shift is slowly happening, and I'm seeing it across a lot of bigger retailers. They're introducing smaller capsules which are 100% sustainable, and I think that's a really good start and a super good change that we're seeing. In terms of like being at the giving movement now, it's when we began a year and a half ago, the founder got in touch with me, and before we even launched the brand, I was so excited about the concept of it being a 100% sustainable brand where it has a positive impact not only for kind of the environment, but also for humanity as well through our donations. So straight away I was like, wow, this is amazing, it's going to be huge, I can't wait to be part of this. And you know, amazingly it's done super well. And to your question, one of the main things that we do is all of our fabrics are from sustainable sources and ethically produced. So for example, our polyester is made from recycled plastic bottles, and also the spandex, which is like a 5% spandex within the fabric to make it stretchy, that is also recycled. So all the yarns within the fabric are recycled, and every collection we're kind of innovating more and more. So we're always trying to find the latest kind of technology within sustainable fabric. And they're the fabrics that we're using to create the collections, because we constantly want to be innovating and using the latest technology. So yeah, we're really proud of our activewear fabric. It's really soft, really comfortable. And another aspect to the brand is that we're also trying our best to make timeless designs that you can wear for a long time. So it's not about creating pieces that are in this season and next season you won't want to wear it. It's about creating really nice silhouettes, really nice shapes that are flattering for everybody, catering to all sizes, so that this piece that you have or that you've bought will last for a very long time in your wardrobe, and you know, you'll want to treasure it and have it for a long time. So that's also something that we're really proud of, and it's a part of our DNA within the brand, to make sure that we're constantly doing that.
That's really exciting to be working within that and seeing something growing, like a movement like that, getting to start from scratch, I suppose, and particularly because you've come from the opposite, like a massive organization where you've seen the alternative.
It's nice to be part of a brand where 100% of everything, you know, you wake up every morning and it's like a good feeling that, you know, you're providing like cool, fashionable pieces, but also they are timeless, and they're made from sustainable fabrics, and we're donating. So it's brilliant.
I moved to Araceli, and I'm not sure which organization or which hat you'll wear to answer the question about where you're embedding sustainability into the strategic operations.
Well, I guess it would be more for Goshopia, because Fashion Revolution doesn't have, they don't sell or they don't produce fashion. So
sure, yeah.
In Goshopia, we have 3 S's or core values, which are, everything is ruled by these 3. So it's low fashion, which would mean like, you know, like nothing is mass produced, everything is done in small batches. We work with artisans, even one-on-one pieces, even made to order, so everything is like only when there is a demand, then it's produced. And the other S would be sustainability, which would be, using organic materials, things that are going to be biodegradable. But sustainability has many angles, as Kharunisa was saying. For example, you can also have recycled PET into your fibers. It's another way. And then our third S is socially responsible, which would be like ethical fashion, basically making sure there is fair wages, that there is fair trade behind that, for example, designers or brands that are working with refugees or NGOs that have an amazing cause behind. So all this is important for us. So what we do, we are an e-marketplace. So what we do, we go through each of the people or the brands that want to be part of our Goshopia family, and we make sure we study the supply chain. We ask a lot of questions here and there, and then once we okay them, then it's like, okay, now you can be part of the family. You can sell in our e-marketplace, and we also support them. And so there is a whole line of things that for us is important from the beginning to the end. So the packaging, for example, our clients are okay if we deliver in something totally unrelated, because we recycle our boxes, we recycle our bags, we recycle everything. And it may not be like an amazing unboxing experience, but they understand what is important for us, and for them it speaks the same language. So for us it's also amazing that. And we also have other things to facilitate precisely. For example, we have a concierge service if they are in Dubai, where we go, if, for example, they are unsure about the size or something, in order to avoid the returns and here and there. So we wait for them. We bring maybe like, we are not sure if you are an L or an M. So we'll go, we take both, you try them on, you see which one, fits you better. And then based on that, we wait outside a little bit until, you made up your choice, and then halas. So it's something that's also accommodating, giving them the opportunity, to see how they fit and stuff. This is, it avoids going and coming and going and coming and packaging here and packaging there. So it's a way. And for us, it's a pleasure really, because we like to be with our customers in any case. So it's not a big deal.
Very innovative, yeah.
Yeah, well, it's like, I guess it's like, because we are, we're still in Dubai, we can't do that. So also another thing we do is styling sessions, because we found out that part of this, there's some people that really do not understand still sustainable fashion, and they think it's something totally different than the fashion that they're used to in the malls and stuff. No? So we help them with some styling sessions, we explain them the story behind the product so that they can feel proud of what they're wearing. If they're, if, for example, these earrings, they are done in Swaziland, but this is actually recycled newspaper. They are done by hand, so these kind of things actually makes you connect with the story behind everything, because everything in Goshopia has a story behind. It's not only the product that you are seeing, there is something behind. And I think that's beautiful, really. So that's what we are doing. And we are giving a lot of talks and education in schools, and also to try to educate everyone really to the benefits of changing and shifting, transitioning.
What I really like, the fact that you explored the supply chain is really interesting. That, for too long we've heard, big fast fashion brands where they take no responsibility for how the product ended up on their shop floor, the supply chain. Oh, we didn't realize that, we had, sub-suppliers. Excellent that you're exploring the supply chain.
This is very true. And when it's a very big fast fashion brand, they have, their supply chain is so long. They have one part being done here, then they ship it to another factory over there, they do something else, and then so it's very difficult to track all that. But we work with independent fashion designers.
Yeah. Brands, and in fairness to brands, big brands, it is a huge, mess to unravel, but there's definitely momentum moving towards it. It's probably easier for smaller brands and independents to take responsibility, or to be able to transparently show their supply chain. But definitely there needs to be that ownership of your supply chain to the end product for sure, moving forward. Okay, Katie, could you take that question next? Thinking about where maybe sustainability might be embedded in Junk Kouture?
Yeah, of course. So for anyone listening and that does not know what Junk Kouture is, we are a global platform for youth creative expression. And our goal is to enrich and empower the lives of young people through creativity and sustainability. But what we offer to schools and young people in second level education is this free to enter year-round program that challenges these students to look at waste differently and to create wearable fashion out of nothing but 100% recycled materials before they showcase their sustainable creations and their backstory. So going what Araceli was saying, these stories behind the creations, they're truly amazing, and they do that in a series of live finals. But when I talk about recycled materials, Dee, I mean everything from your fabric offcuts, your leather offcuts that you find in the back of your wardrobe that students are no longer wearing, right through to some real innovative materials like film reel, fruit fiber. Like I mentioned, my design, I used orange peel to create a leather-like fabric that I was able to sew together. And sea glass was another one we had as last year's winner. So everything goes at Junk Kouture, and the students' innovation and their creative talents never fails to amaze us. And it really gives us some sense of optimism in regards to the future of the fashion industry when they're using materials like what I've mentioned to create the most exquisite designs that are highly wearable and red carpet ready, as I've seen so many of them. And yeah, they are, and really, Dee, that's something that we take pride in as a brand. It's how the program tackles climate change differently. We challenge these young people to become micro-influencers for change, creativity and circularity. And all we do is just present them with the opportunity to make an impact through self-expression as we work on influencing their habits. And then what happens then is each of these students become a circular engineer in their own right. They look at waste, bottle caps, they're drinking a bottle, they look at bottle caps in a new way. Not all waste has to be thrown out. How else can we utilize this and prolong its life? And that then carries on into their own fashion sense and what they speak to their peers about. And really, when they become these circular engineers, we believe that this is the first step on creating this new circular world. And after 11 years in Ireland, Junk Kouture has now gone global. I'm of course in the UAE at the moment launching the brand here, and we've launched in 5 new markets, so Abu Dhabi, New York, Milan, Paris and London. So for me personally, having taken part all the way back in 2012, I'm so excited to see, to be a part of this mission and movement and to encourage more sustainable behaviours within young people through creativity and fashion.
Amazing. Okay, brilliant. Thanks, Katie. And Corinne, I'd love to hear what McKinsey and Co, how they're embedding sustainability. I would say there's a lot of creative work going on.
I don't think I'm going to talk, McKinsey is doing a huge amount, on kind of our own carbon footprint and massively scaling our sustainability work with clients. But I actually think it might be more interesting to talk about what I'm seeing because I see the fashion system from many different perspectives. I see the big global corporates, I see the not-for-profits, I see the startups. So I kind of see what's going on lots of different angles, and thought it might be good to give that system perspective about what everyone's trying to do. And the two main goals for folks who care about this stuff, which is now most leading companies, is to the stuff you're making, make it cleaner. So decarbonize how you're making it and get rid of nasty chemicals and kind of water degradation in the process. That's one goal. And another goal is make less of it. So introduce more circular material flows. Those are both very hard and much easier said than done. And the kind of dynamic we see is there's the smaller new companies, the startups, are a critical part of the system because they both develop new technologies or new innovations, which are then kind of either copied or scaled by bigger companies. And they also put pressure on bigger companies because they kind of show what is possible, and they educate consumers. So there's an interesting relationship there between the importance of the small companies often kind of leading the way. And then thinking about how some of the big brands are trying to tackle this, the really great ones are engaging in a kind of portfolio of experiments. So they will, particularly around circularity, where there's a lot of hype, as you guys all know, everyone's talking about circularity, actually making it a reality, not just in going from 1% to 2% of closed loop materials, but going 1% to 80%, You know, that's a huge transition. So the companies who are really serious about it are throwing loads of experiments out there. They'll be trialing repair services and take back services, and they'll be working with, you know, municipal governments in trying to work out how we get collection infrastructure where it needs to be, where it's nowhere right now. And they'll be working with, there's a fantastic pre-competitive partnership between a bunch of different brands and recycling facilities in Bangladesh, helping to get recycling in the production part of the value chain going, where there's all these scraps and it's easy to recycle because it's not mixed up, right? It's all the same material. So that's where the brands who are really serious about it are trying lots of different things at once, which is what you have to do. And there's also a big emphasis on partnerships and working together, and that could be working with your competitors. I just gave, like, you know, often I hear from big corporate sustainability, the one advantage on it. You know, they can more progress made by working together, and partnerships with small companies. Then also engaging with regulators, and I'd like to echo the point Araceli made earlier: the critical importance of regulation, enabler, and an accelerator. None of this is happening enough. You know, we have to, if we hit 1.5 degrees, we have to by 2030. Currently on track, fashion system is. No, we're currently on track to more like be 50% more emissions than we currently are now. So we need to be like that, and we're going like that. So engaging with regulators, and that's both regulators in whatever country you're working in, and also wherever your manufacturing is happening, to just help those right economic incentives get in place to accelerate the transition to the right. You know, if the manufacturers need green electricity, renewable electricity, for example, you know, they need the right enablers in place. So there's a really taking a system view and working together with other parts of the system is critical. And I feel hopeful based on what I see, but nothing's happening fast enough.
Yeah, well, that is it. And that's the only way that, you know, to speed it up is to regulate it. I think, you know, as much as it's, you know, we should be able to regulate ourselves, or, you know, do the right thing. But I mean, if you're in business and your competitor is, you know, getting those cheap prices and your cost of materials is more expensive because you're doing it right, you know, there's that throw up between like, well, will I continue to do the right thing and go out of business? Because there's, you know, it's just this big kind of system that needs to be regulated, basically, to help people do the right thing. For sure.
Level the playing field.
Yes, for everyone. But yes, sure, Araceli.
Sorry.
Yeah,
I also wanted to mention what Corinne is saying, connected to the fact that it's not only about the policy and the regulators, definitely, but also to create the right framework. For example, when it comes to energy, when it comes to water usage and water recycling, that would be so critical to be able for the manufacturers and for everyone really to be able to you know, to enjoy that without having to start thinking like how, you know, like this is something that should be part of already of the services that we have everywhere.
Yeah.
And it's not. It's a shame, but it's not. And I also forgot to say something that we also do on Goshopia. With every purchase, we plant trees. We plant a tree. So we are working with onetreeplanted.org, which, you know, so it depends on you. It's really cool because you get to select what different area of the world you want to reforest. And I'm really dreaming that eventually we will have a whole Goshopia forest with all our amazing customers having, you know, like the little purchases in there. And that would be so amazing. You can, for example, choose, we chose Amazonia when it was, you know, the Amazon was burning in Australia, Haiti. So we have different projects across the world and we're helping them to build those forests. Brilliant. I think this is also something very important. Maybe, you know, just to try to reach that carbon neutrality. One way or another.
Look, these initiatives seem small, but at least it brings awareness to people that they realize like that these things are important, but we just need to scale it up. I might just, so we've talked about the kind of what businesses and corporations are doing. So Corinne, I might just stay with you to see, have you seen any shift then in maybe consumer habits and thinking about different ways consumers are changing their behaviors?
Yeah, so obviously this is a very hot topic for corporates, because they're wanting to understand, it's a big part of what they do is understanding consumers. It's, the big question, we've conducted recent research over the last year that sort of looks very promising. 55% of consumers, as apparel consumers, say that they've made changes in their behavior in the last 18 months to lessen impact on the environment, that they're willing to buy less volume of clothing. And one piece I found very interesting was the importance of newness or fashionability has become much less significant in recent years, which I think is critical. This idea of the fashion cycle having a grip, of having to have new things every 6 months. It seems like consumers are stating that's less important to them, and that there are more inherent values of durability and integrity of the brand behind it are more important. Now, the big question that people are always asking, and it's sort of hard to answer still, is to what extent are consumers willing to pay more for sustainability? Because often it costs a bit more to make things the right way and the clean way, or it requires some upfront investments to, say, retrofit a factory, or and that I'd say the jury's still out on that. Obviously, there are some segments of consumers who are. Sorry, what was that?
The attitude behavior gap.
Yeah, exactly. And there are some consumers who are willing to pay more. It's just how widespread are they? But I personally, I think the power of social norms and social stigma is critical and very, very important. And I think what happens is certain things, fast fashion starts to become stigmatized in certain social groups. And I've seen that happen. And I'll be interested to see how widespread that could be.
Okay. Brilliant. Thanks. Maybe Katie, do you want to come in there? Do you see any, maybe you mentioned as well, being close to the Gen Z demographic?
Definitely. Definitely see that social shift and the stigma that comes with fast fashion now. There's a massive shift in the conversations that used to be popular and used to be, oh, where did you get that? And you have a full new outfit on you. Now there's a bit of I find in conversations, there's a bit of a, oh, really, that's not cool anymore. Like, come on, get with the times. Like, that's not something to be boasting about, I suppose, without trying to sound a bit condescending saying that. I find that now my group of friends, I'm the eldest sister of 3 younger girls. They're younger than me. It's now cool. It's now a trend to say, I bought this on a secondhand app. I am wearing my dad's shirt that I've cut in 2 and I've stitched together myself. These are things that are happening that are taking over. And I think that's really exciting, because for the younger generation, it's now becoming an inherent part of their DNA to do these things. And it's becoming the norm for them. Where for me, I suppose, growing up in school, the words fast fashion, the word sustainability, the impact the fashion industry is having on the climate only became apparent for me throughout my time in university. And, now you have this being taught in primary school education. It's now younger generations teaching my parents' age and so on. It's like they're now teaching us because they're being brought up with it. They're now following influencers that have these beliefs as well that align with their students' ethos and values. I think that's really exciting, because as the generation grows, there's going to be more and more of them, and they take up a large percentage of consumers. And yeah, these conversations are exciting. And for me, buying sustainably is really important. And I think for a younger generation and for people that might find it quite difficult and where to get started, it's just asking yourself a question, if buying a more expensive garment isn't within your capacity, it's saying, right, well, that high fashion, your Zara, H&M or whatever brand you might want to tend to buy for a lot, it's saying, do I need that? Will I wear it a minimum of 30 times? If you are an online shopper, you're trying to get that dopamine high. It's about adding it to a basket and maybe waiting until tomorrow to see if that dopamine high, ends. You're saying to yourself, no, I don't need that garment because I already have, the most sustainable garment you can ever buy is the one already in your wardrobe. Looking at your neighbors, and just making it really simple for people to understand. And they're just little ways that I've tried to adopt it in the last few years when I've become more aware of sustainable fashion.
Brilliant. Thanks. It's lovely to hear firsthand what you're seeing on the street. So look, just a final question. I'm ask to a couple of you, maybe, who do you think, or what who are the key players, industry changers in the advancement of sustainability in fashion? And I might just direct that to Kharunisa.
I would, without sounding too biased, I would say that actually H&M probably are one of the biggest kind of change makers within this. They are influencing a lot of people, and I know that they also invest in a lot of startups that are trying to be sustainable, new innovations, new fabrics. I know that they invest in these smaller brands to try and like help innovations and new things come and grow. So that's a huge thing. One of the 4 pillars of the brand is sustainability. So there's a lot happening behind closed doors, as well as like, I think a lot of smaller startups like the Giving Movement and many other fashion brands that are startups are creating, I guess, like a desire for a more sustainable wardrobe. I think people are always going to want to shop. They're always going to want to have like new things, and the important thing to keep in mind is to be able to provide them with options that are more sustainable and more environmentally friendly, that can help them to make a more conscious decision.
Okay, very good. And maybe Corinne, if you want to take that question before we finish up here, we're running out of time. Key players.
You know, I think I would like to emphasize the power of consumers. You know, if you are a consumer, I know how much the big brands study consumers and are desperate to understand them and kind of want to meet their needs. So it's kind of, the consumers have driven huge shifts in what the big brands are doing. So don't underestimate that. But ultimately, I kind of have a slightly boring answer, which is everyone has to act together. The kind of most influential is everyone coming together, really. And that's startups, that's investors, that's regulators, that's consumers, that's established corporates.
Okay, yeah, I do agree. It kind of has to be a collaboration. There's nobody to blame. We're all in it. We're citizens at the end of the day.
We're all in it
each
together.
And every one of us. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I would have gone to Q&A, but I think we're a bit tight on time. So what I'd like to do as we come to the end of the session is to thank everyone for joining us today, and especially to thank our panelists for taking the time to speak with us. Without a doubt, sustainable fashion and building circular fashion economies is a critical area to grow if we are truly dedicated to tackling climate change. We hope this session sheds some light on the work already in motion to make that much needed change. And if you'd like to watch back on this discussion or share it with colleagues, please note a recording will be available on the ADSW YouTube page. And please do continue to enjoy the excellent ADSW web series lineup for the week ahead. Thank you for joining us.